Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys had an amazing holiday season and are gearing up to have an amazing New Year's. I really wanted to get a video out on Friday because I knew if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to see you guys until Sunday, which is today. I recently went to Orlando. I just got back earlier today and I got a pretty big tattoo. It's about 6 inches. I was beyond excited to get this tattoo. I've been looking at this artist for like months and I've had this appointment booked since like October, so I was super, super excited. And I hope that you guys like it when you see it. It's still healing. It's on my side, so I'm a little bit sensitive, but we're pushing through and I cannot wait until it's healed so then I can finally show it off and it can look super good with all my outfits and it's beautiful. That artist is so crazy talented. I actually have a lot to say today. I wanted to talk about FOMO and why social media makes FOMO worse. If you guys don't know what FOMO is an acronym that stands for fear of missing out, and it's basically the uneasy feeling or anxiety somebody gets when they notice that other people are having an experience that they're not a part of. This feeling can be really, really uncomfortable and can cause you to see your own experiences as insignificant and cause you to compare yourself to other people. I kind of wanted to start off this video talking about my personal struggles with FOMO because I can absolutely empathize and relate to FOMO. I had really, really bad FOMO in high school. I had pretty strict parents, so I wasn't really allowed to go out too much. And I would feel really, really bad and uneasy when I would see all of my friends constantly going out, knowing that I couldn't be there and also have those experiences. And like I stated before in the definition, that does definitely take a hit on a kid's confidence. It did cause me to compare myself a lot to other people and their lives and caused me to see my own experiences as somehow less significant. That is honestly still a feeling I carry to this day. I am now no longer in high school. I am 18 and a half. I have a lot more freedom, a lot more opportunity to kind of do all the things that I was missing out on in my teenage years. But I still do find myself anxiously over worrying about missing out on other experiences that kids are having. And it's still a very uneasy and uncomfortable thought to battle with. But that's why I wanted to talk to you guys about this today because I think it's so, so important to really grasp what FOMO is and how it can hurt us and how social media, especially, makes it so much worse. Although I'm a firm believer that social media is like literally the root of all evil, it's just a part of our society now and it's really almost impossible to get rid of it. And trust me, I have tried my own experiences with this. I have deleted and re-downloaded social media more times than I can honestly even count in the last couple years. And it is really hard. It is really hard to detach yourself from everything that goes on social media. So far, I have lowered my social media to only one app, and that is Instagram. And I still do have a really harsh battle with Instagram. I am still actively trying to detach from Instagram, but it is really hard when all of my friends are on that app and I still want to stay in the loop. Even when you don't have social media downloaded, you still have a sense of FOMO. You still have a fear of missing out of what your friends could potentially be posting, what your friends could be saying, and you still feel like you're not in the loop of things that are going on, even though you could just as easily talk to said people outside of social media. Even when you know that having social media makes that FOMO and comparison feeling a lot worse, not having social media also makes you feel completely disconnected and like you don't know what's going on, and it still creates a sense of FOMO no matter whether you have it or don't. And like I said about current affairs, I feel like Gen Z really, really relies on social media to get the news about what's going on in the world. I feel like it's pretty rare for somebody that's born in Gen Z, especially a little bit later, after the 90s and stuff, to authentically look at the news. I've never heard of one of my friends authentically doing that, like waking up in the morning and actually turning on the news. So I feel like especially our generation really relies on social media to get the current news and to see what's going on with current affairs. So not having social media can almost create that type of FOMO of just not knowing what's going on. And I'm not saying in any way that social media is a good place to get your news at all. Please actually look at articles and look at actual news stations if you want news. But I do feel like a lot of people, just out of convenience sake, rely on Instagram or TikTok or social media platforms to give them the local news or especially the drama. I feel like that's also what I mean by current affairs. I feel like the actual physical news don't really cover like internet drama ever. So not having social media kind of creates the FOMO of not knowing like the new hot internet gossip, and you're missing out on what all of the other people know on social media. The website socialmediavictims.org actually shared a pretty understandable statement on why people feel so compelled to continue to check on social media. They say the compulsion to constantly check social media stems from fears associated with specific functions of social media, including the ability to share photos and videos, communicate with others, and create groups, amongst more. I feel like that kind of helps to give a little bit more context on what I mean when I say that not having social media still can give FOMO. Because without social media, you're kind of missing the easiest way to communicate with people and share photos and videos and see what's going on. So when you don't have social media in your life, you just kind of feel a little bit stuck, in lack of better words. What I mean is that not having social media can sometimes make these compulsions a little worse. In my experience, in my opinion at least, when you don't have social media, you really do get that urge to just scroll and see what everybody's going on and talk to other people and send photos or streaks or something with your friends. And when social media isn't there actively in your life, it can kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable and angsty, which is what I think is also a side effect of FOMO in this situation and can make you miss those habits that you've formed from social media. I have a really interesting video I wanted to show you guys that I found on TikTok. Yes, although I only have Instagram downloaded, I do go on TikTok periodically to find these sort of videos because I feel like Instagram's not the best with their search engine, and I really wanted to find some specific videos on this topic.
My brain, when I'm trying to get off social media, experiences the craziest version of fake FOMO that I can even explain. It's like, what if I get a DM? You haven't gotten a DM of somebody asking you a pressing issue ever. 6 months at least. Or being like, but what if somebody sends me something? Who sends you anything other than your boyfriend and your best friend? Like, genuinely, the amount of FOMO that I create for myself just because I'm addicted to my phone actually needs to be studied.
I think this creator brings up a really, really interesting perspective. This whole idea of fake FOMO, which is kind of what I was going off on this whole tangent about FOMO away from social media. I think she really put a pin in it and defined it perfectly as fake FOMO. This whole idea of being nervous about what if your friends text you, what if they send you a video, what if something is happening that you're missing out on, when in reality, that's probably not happening. I mean, some people do talk to people a lot throughout the day, but me personally, I send reels and videos and photos to only a few friends throughout the day. And I feel like that's pretty common for everybody. So, this fear of, what if my friends send me something? What if this? What if that? What if somebody's trying to get in contact with me? Is pretty unprecedented and honestly quite unrealistic because, especially if we're sending videos to close friends, if they had to actually get in contact with us and tell us something important, more likely than not, they already have our actual contact information and can do that directly. So I'm really glad for this creator's insight. I really like the term fake FOMO, and I think it's really important to this discussion of how FOMO kind of works without social media. So it does take about a month to fully, draw back from social media, but it is absolutely possible. And I think deleting social media completely can absolutely make FOMO a lot less heavy in your current life. So yeah, I definitely think this whole idea of fake FOMO is really prevalent in our society, and it would be best to honestly step away and kind of reassess the habits it's made us form in hopes to form better ones and kind of deconstruct this idea that we're missing out from something if we don't have social media. Because honestly, the periods of times that I've deleted social media and have genuinely just gone on about my life, after a week or two, I completely forget like why I even wanted social media to begin with. And that sense of FOMO does really start faltering away. So I really recommend that for you guys if you are experiencing bad FOMO or FOMO in general. Try just taking some time off social media to realign yourself with like daily life and normal life, and tell yourself that all the perfectionism and all the activities going on social media are more likely than not pretty unrealistic, and you shouldn't have FOMO or compare yourself to things like that. Okay, now I kind of wanted to talk about why social media makes FOMO worse. And I feel like that's pretty self explanatory through the things that I've been saying, but I really wanted to nail down the clear context of why social media makes FOMO worse. I have this really great quote from Cerebral.com that I want to read to you guys. In modern life, social media has become one of the primary drivers of FOMO. Platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok showcase curated snapshots of other people's lives, vacations, celebrations, milestones, creating the illusion that others are living more fulfilling or exciting lives. This constant exposure can lead to a sense of dissatisfaction with one's own life, even if the comparisons are based on incomplete or idealized portrayals. As we all know, a lot of social media is not real. It is perfectly curated content designed for the viewers, designed to trick them into thinking what is going on in the video is actually real. If you're on social media and you're constantly just being fed these influencers doing all these perfect things, like constantly going out to the club or going out to events or living this incredibly lavish lifestyle, you are understandably going to compare your own life to theirs and see your life and your experiences as somehow less significant than theirs. But I need you to remind yourself these are curated and designed for this purpose. They are designed to make you insecure. These types of videos are designed to make you compare your life to them. That is why those influencers get so much engagement and get so many people following them, because they are designed to pull people in to gawk at them and somehow compare their lives to these rich, extraordinary, one in a million types of lives. Additionally, if you're on social media all the time, you might be seeing all of your friends posting, and maybe they're all posting about hanging out with friends or going to places that you are not at. And that can kind of create this sense of FOMO, like you're the only sole person alone right now while everybody else is hanging out with somebody. Of course, to you, it seems like all of your friends are hanging out with somebody because they are only posting when they are hanging out with somebody. If everybody posted only when they are hanging out with other people or when they are doing fun things, the viewer is obviously going to have this narrow image of this person and think that they're always going to events or always hanging out with their friends. Reminder that when you see your friends' stories and they're hanging out with their friends, that's normal. But how often are they doing that? They're probably and realistically not doing that every single day, and maybe are just doing it every once in a while. But seeing different people's stories, people that are completely unrelated to each other, post with their friends, creates this sense of FOMO in you that makes you feel like you are the only person that is not hanging out with somebody right now, when that is probably the farthest thing from the truth. Realistically, a lot of the people you're viewing also don't hang out with people actively, like 90% of the time, but they're showing you this image that they are hanging out with people, and that can make you feel like you're the only person not hanging out with somebody. I also have a couple videos for you guys that I think are important to this section of the video. That video honestly doesn't really add much to the conversation. I just think it's a really important point to make, to see that other people also actively feel this way. The people that are posting curated images and videos to you showing off their perfect life could also be having an intense sense of FOMO themselves. So, although this video wasn't meant to be shown to really contribute much to the conversation, I just kind of wanted to put it in to showcase that FOMO can actually be a really, really deep and sensitive feeling for a lot of people. So you're definitely not alone if you have this fear of missing out on exciting events. It's actually a very, very common feeling for a lot of people. Okay, I thought I had a couple of videos to show you about that. I only had one. I don't know why I put in my notes that I had another video. I did not. So we're just going to go ahead and move on to the other topic. I kind of wanted to talk about the experience of FOMO and how it can differ from the millennial generation to Gen Z. There's this really interesting podcast video that I wanted to show you guys on this topic.
FOMO is a huge, huge concept and experience, especially for young Gen Z and for Gen Alpha. They only know FOMO instantly. Like they know immediately if they were left out of something. They know, in fact, with Snapchat, you share your location. Typically, kids do. So they can go on and see where all of their friends are. So let's say most of your friends are at someone's house and you're not there.
You just see all the little cartoons in one
Yes,
location.
you see all the little people,
What a trip.
and then you know you weren't invited, and
trip.
that sucks,
Yeah.
right? So that affects as a child growing. and your brain's growing, your
I
confidence
thought it
is
was just the
growing.
parents overreacting and feeding into something more so than what you're describing is the little cartoons in the Snapchat. You're not there, and it's like this shit is real.
So when you're growing and you're building your self-esteem, and middle school's, I think, is the worst time of a child's life. And then so those kids, on top of just the normal crap that you go through as a 12, 13, 14 year old, now you have technology shoving in your face. Well, guess what you missed out on
Sure.
right away. So for the millennials, they had the privilege of going
Yeah.
through their toddler years, their elementary years, their middle school years without that.
And even as like the technology boom, so to speak, kind of happened, I remember growing up, we only had one TV and it was in the living room. We only had
Right.
one computer and it was designated to be, wherever it was. And I never had a TV in my room growing up. I didn't have my first phone until like eighth grade. So looking back, I think that did kind of help me just kind of
Yeah.
come into my own.
I think this is an incredibly great point to make to show the difference between how millennials and Gen Z took on FOMO as a feeling. As mentioned in the video, for the generation that only grew up with like a TV at home, didn't grow up with social media, didn't grow up with little small phones actively in their pocket 24/7, it was a lot harder to know when you were left out and it was a lot harder to know when you weren't there. Usually, you knowing that you weren't invited to something happened physically in that space, as in a conversation where you found out that you weren't there, or when you found out that your friends were going somewhere and you weren't going to be there. It was a lot more in the moment and then than something that you could see like later on posted online. I'm really glad she brought up that point about Snapchat because I think that's a really great point. I don't know about TikTok, but I do know that Instagram has now added a maps feature and I always think that's kind of weird. I don't know about you guys, but I've literally never turned those on. I think that's low key a little weird. Like I don't want people to know where I live. There's probably like 3 friends that actually know my address, but other than that, like I'm not close with that many people that I want them to know where I actively live. But besides the point, I think what she brought up was an excellent point about how in real time you can see where your friends are at. You can see those little icons all in one place and you can tell that all of your friends are somewhere that you aren't. And that is very different from how millennials dealt with FOMO. That was a lot more in conversation in person. I feel like with Gen Z, it's a lot more online, a lot more instant. You can kind of see from far away, like for example, like on a story. You don't have to be there physically having a conversation with somebody to know that you were left out of a situation. You can see your friends' stories, you can see the little icons on the map to know that you're actively being left out from something before you even find out about it. I hope I'm making sense when I'm trying to explain that point. I just wanted to kind of emphasize the difference of the two generations, even though a couple millennials and a couple of Gen Zs are super close in age. I feel like it is exponentially two different worlds to be raised completely online and to be raised predominantly with no physical online aspects such as a phone until a little bit later, until like the teen years or until a little bit after that, like maybe early 20s. So I definitely wanted to comment on that. I do kind of want your guys' thoughts on that because I do want to know if I'm making sense or not. I really hope my point came off clear, but please let me know how you feel about that specifically down in the comments. Another point I wanted to bring up very, very quickly is doing things because of FOMO, not because you actually want to. And I have a video for you guys for this one. I think this is a really, really interesting perspective, kind of like the fake FOMO one. It's a very unique perspective, and I think it makes sense a lot, especially in this generation. Kind of seeing our friends post where they're at, we're seeing all these influencers post about their perfect lives. Sometimes we just want that. The fear of missing out can be just wanting that experience, not because you actually want to be there or enjoy that experience, but just because you're scared of missing out what goes on or scared of missing the ability to be able to say that you did have that experience. And I think that's really interesting and a point that I think I can really relate to. In high school, I knew a lot of people who were pretty big party people. And although I had no interest in partying, it just wasn't my type of scene, it wasn't my type of vibe, I still had intense FOMO from them just because I wanted to say that I had those experiences. I just wanted to be there. I didn't want to miss the conversation or the opportunity to make new friends and connect. But when it came to the actual partying aspect, I didn't really care about the event or wanted to be there. I really, really appreciate this creator's point of bringing up that sometimes FOMO can just come from the fear of not being there, not from the place of actually wanting to go to that place. So I really appreciate this content creator for bringing this point up that sometimes FOMO can be the fear of just simply physically not being there. It doesn't really have to be from the fear of missing out an experience or this specific event. It can just be the fear of just not being there physically and missing out that like conversation or what goes on. I also hope that point makes sense. I'm trying really hard to keep up with my notes, but I feel like it looks like I wrote them while I was half awake apparently because I'm really trying to remember what I was trying to say in these notes. Well, yeah, that's all I had to say about this topic today, guys. I really hope I made sense and was able to make my points. I just wanted to open a conversation about FOMO and how social media makes it worse in hopes that you guys take a little bit away from that and can kind of combat your own FOMO if that is something you're struggling with. I don't feel like I'm the best person to give advice on FOMO because it is something I still am struggling with. But I feel like if I had to give advice, it would be to understand that you cannot be everywhere at once. You cannot be in all of these memories and all of these events at once. And with that being said, when you are at an event, I feel like you should prioritize being in the moment, really soaking up that event, really making sure you get the most fun out of it. So in the future, you can appreciate those memories more instead of just thinking about all the memories you missed and you weren't a part of. You can actually appreciate the memories that you were a part of. Another thing is, I would recommend like focusing on the relationships you already do have instead of worrying about the connections that you don't have and building them to the best of their abilities so they can feel even more fulfilling to you and take place of all those connections that you were hoping to build. Well, yeah, I hope you guys took something away from this video. If you have anything to say or anything to add to the discussion, please do not be afraid to do so in the comments down below. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!